Okay, so what exactly does the woke left want? The answer is the woke left wants all of the things. So Shaun King of the New York Daily News and a self-proclaimed civil rights leader, he reacted to a post from Matt Schlapp. Matt Schlapp is the head of the American Conservative Union, and Matt Schlapp had tweeted out that sooner or later the left was going to come for statues of Jesus. They're coming for statues of literally everyone else. And Shaun King immediately tweeted back, yes, I think the statues of the white European they claim is Jesus should also come down. They are a form of white supremacy, always have been. In the Bible, when the family of Jesus wanted to hide and blend in, guess where they went? Egypt, not Denmark. Tear them down. So tear down every depiction of Jesus as a white person. By the way, Jesus was not a black person either. Jesus was a Jew. Okay, probably looked like my father-in-law. Like, seriously, he looked like a modern-day Israeli, probably, Jesus. He's probably a short, stubby Jew, right? That's it, because guess what? That's what, like, he was a Jew. I don't know what to tell you about this, right? He probably did not look like a 6'5" Norwegian, right? I get it. But the idea that you are going to tear down all art of Jesus, and then he continued along these lines. He said, yes, all murals and stained glass windows of white Jesus and his European mother and their white friends should also come down. They're a gross form of white supremacy created as tools of oppression, racist propaganda. They should all come down. So how do you feel about shattering all the stained glass windows? What do you think? Should we just go to, all of the world's historic churches and start shattering windows? Apparently, the answer is yes. Okay, and the attempt to tear down statues continued apace. It's all statues. It is all statues, right? It is not just restricted to Confederate monuments. It is not just restricted to people in history who have very checkered past, the Andrew Jacksons of the world. They tried to tear that statue down in Lafayette Park last night. It's not just restricted to old Confederates, right? Teddy Roosevelt statues need to be taken down. Bill de Blasio said that Teddy Roosevelt did things that are deeply disturbing. We are 5 seconds away, by the way, from the blow up Mount Rushmore movement. Like that is 5 seconds away, because Mount Rushmore features a bevy of people who have all been canceled. In fact, there's nobody on Mount Rushmore who has not been canceled, right? All the people on Mount Rushmore at this point have been canceled so far as I am aware, right? George Washington has had his statues torn down, and so has Thomas Jefferson. Abraham Lincoln has been canceled by people who have suggested that, if you look at his early writings, he talks about taking black people and creating Liberia and moving them back to Africa. And he wasn't in favor of racial equality. He wasn't even in favor of getting rid of slavery at the outset of the Civil War. So Abraham Lincoln has been canceled, and now Teddy Roosevelt is being canceled. Here's Bill de Blasio, giant weirdo and groundhog murderer, talking about how Teddy Roosevelt is canceled.
Roosevelt himself is another one of these complex figures in American history. He did some extraordinarily progressive things that we feel to this day. And he did some things that I think are deeply troubling. But I think there's a separate question between him, the person, and the actual statue. The statue has representations that clearly do not represent today's values. The statue clearly, presents a white man as superior to people of color.
Okay, that is not really what the statue was dedicated to do. But in any case, Bill de Blasio and the rest of the new communist crew have figured out exactly what it is that they want. And what they want is all of the things. Right? And this does tie into a broader narrative, again, of American racism and American evil. Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas, he pointed out yesterday, when you rip down Washington and Grant, you're not doing that because you want to correct American history. You're doing that because you really don't like the country, and you think the country from inception is evil and bad. You're talking not just about ripping down monuments of Confederates who fought against the Union. You're talking about ripping down the Union itself.
Witness the events of just this past weekend, where mobs tore down statues of George Washington and Ulysses S. Grant. When you tear down statues of Washington and Grant, it's not about the Civil War. It's because you hate America. And indeed, these rioters hate America. In Portland, where they tore down the statue of Washington, they also spray painted on him the date 1619, a reference to the New York Times' revisionist anti-American history project.
Okay, he is exactly right about all of this. And this is part of, again, a broader goal. And the broader goal is tear down the system. Now, some of the leaders in the Black Lives Matter movement will say as much. Black Lives Matter founder Patrisse Cullors, she actually came out a few years back in 2015 and expressed what exactly her goals were. She said, yeah, I'm a Marxist. We're trained Marxists. Like, our goal is to tear down the system.
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories.
It's not about stopping racism for a lot of the people who are involved in this. It is about stopping the system itself, because the system itself is supposedly an outgrowth of racism and bigotry. By the way, this is one of the problems that a lot of people on the left, they don't understand. People on the right, they say, why won't you just say Black Lives Matter? Okay, I'm happy to say Black Lives Matter. Black lives do matter, because that's perfectly obvious. It's perfectly obvious that Black Lives Matter. The reason people object to the phrase Black Lives Matter is because there's an actual group called Black Lives Matter. And when people say Black Lives Matter, that is a term that suffers from in linguistics, they call it semantic overload. It is a term that means more than one thing. The group Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group. Okay, the group itself, which is not the movement, right? It's just the group that created the movement. That group is really not a great group. Their website specifically says, we call for an end to the systemic racism that allows this culture of corruption to go unchecked and our lives to be taken. We need to defund the police nationally. We demand investment in our communities and the resources to ensure Black people not only survive but thrive. If you're with us, add your name to this petition. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. In other words, it's a Marxist group. I mean, the BLM website also takes time out to rip on Israel because that's what they do. It's pretty incredible. So when people object to sort of the Black Lives Matter tag, it's because it's not clear what exactly that means. Because on the one hand, it's perfectly obvious. On the other, it is perfectly not. On the one hand, it's perfectly obvious that Black Lives Matter, and everyone, 100% of Americans virtually agrees with this idea. And the ones who don't are significant outliers that everybody despises. And then you have people who are the Black Lives Matter organizers and leaders and members of that group. And the group itself is really not great and is pushing an agenda that has very little to do with fighting racism. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.